everyone. So today we are going to be doing a very different type of video. I don't normally do videos like this, but it was just on my chest, it was on my mind, and I wanted to talk about it. And I'm kind of dipping my toe into the whole like commentary type of sphere just for this video. So if this is not your type of video, I totally understand. I have plenty more on my channel. But if you do like this video, definitely let me know. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, do all the things, and maybe I'll make more videos like this, but I don't know. This is just probably a one-off type of video and we'll see how it goes. Oh, and here's my kitty cat. He wanted to make a quick little cameo. Someone did want to see my little kitty cat, so here is my little kitty cat Popo. I also expect this to be a longer type of video, so maybe get you a snack and get settled in, because today I am going to be giving my review, my thoughts, my critique on the Vampire Academy Peacock TV series. Now, today is the day of the finale. I have watched the entire first season and I have some thoughts. And before we get started, I do want to say major spoiler alerts for the Vampire Academy book series, the Vampire Academy TV series, as well as maybe even a few spoilers from the spin-off series of the books from the Bloodlines book series. I'm actually currently in the middle of the Bloodlines, so I don't know everything that happens, but I'm about halfway through, and there's definitely some things that carry along from the first book series to the second book series that definitely makes a difference in the TV show. I do want to give a little bit of like a background just so you know kind of like where I'm coming from with any of my critiques. So if you are not familiar, Vampire Academy is a book series. It's like a young adult book series that came out, I would think the first book was published in 2007, and I read these like when they came out. I remember I was in 8th grade when these came out, so I was 13 or 14, and I have to say I was a really big fan of these books. If you grew up in the mid to late 2000s, there is a high chance that you were into vampire fiction, vampire literature, and I was definitely one of those girls, not gonna lie. I have to say I was not a fan of Twilight though. I mean, I did read all the books, I think I read all the books. I don't know, Twilight was not my jam. But Vampire Academy was such a good book series. Now, I did have some flaws and things like that, and I have gripes and complaints with some things in that book series as well, which I will discuss a little bit in this video. But for the most part, I was a pretty big fan of the book series. You might know that in, I think it was 2017, there was a movie adaptation, and I think pretty collectively everybody wasn't really that into it. I think it pretty much turned into like a major flop type of movie. I'm sure some people enjoyed it and some people hated it, but I think for most people it was just kind of a bit of a letdown. Whenever I heard that they announced that they were doing a TV series on this book series, I was very excited because I thought this is going to be the redemption arc that this series deserved. And usually in Hollywood, like, you get one chance, and if you mess that up, it's never coming back. So the fact that they even got the green light to do a TV show, I was already stoked about. And I was really interested to see, you know, how they were going to take the story and either spin it in a new way, or if they were going to do like a direct adaptation. Of course, nothing is as good as the movie or the TV show in your mind when you're reading books, which is definitely the case. I mean, nothing will ever, I guess, measure up to the cinematic universe in my mind. But I wanted to go into this with a really open mind and open heart, because obviously, you know, you can't expect everything to be exactly the same as the books. Some things just logically wouldn't work out like it would in a book on screen, and vice versa. Just, there's so many things. And I definitely had some strong feelings at the very beginning of the TV show when they started airing them. So I'm really kind of seeing what they did with the source material, and I have a lot of thoughts, you guys, a lot. And I want to just preface this by saying any of these critiques that I have of this TV series is not me being a hater. It's just coming from a place of like a true book lover and a lover of these characters and this universe and the story that Rochelle Mead had created. I think the way that she built this world and this universe interweaves all of these conflicts and plots and subplots and everything. I think she did a wonderful job with it and just made a wonderful series. So it's kind of hard whenever you have other people coming in and just changing everything. I think that you are either of two minds when it comes to this series. Either one, you are a fan or somewhat familiar and you have these preconceived expectations of what the show is going to be like, what the characters are going to be like, what the plot lines are going to be like. Or you are of the other mind of someone who is not familiar with the story and experiencing this for the first time. And I think that depending on what side of the fence you are on, you're going to have a very different viewing experience when it comes to this TV show. Overall, it was very different than what I was expecting. And of course, I knew it wasn't going to be like a direct one-to-one adaptation, which a lot of people say, you know, why would you even want that? You've already read the book, you've already had that whole experience. Why do you want that on screen? And I do see the point of that, but I have to say, I had such high hopes for this, and I really did kind of want to see like kind of a really true adaptation. Now, of course, a little bit of changing here or there, you know, that's just something that's natural with film or TV show from book adaptations. That's just something you have to expect. But let me tell you, you guys, this is like a whole different rodeo. So let's get into the actual video. Hopefully my long-winded intro gives you a little bit of background of where I'm coming from as a viewer of this TV series. And I first off want to start with what I thought they got right. So the first thing that I really liked was that there was more racial diversity in this cast. There was not very much diversity, I would say, in the movie adaptation. They tried to stay pretty clear to, I guess, the book descriptions of the characters, but I feel like they took a lot more liberty with that in the TV series, and I thought it was perfectly fine and made a lot of sense. And my next point kind of goes hand in hand in that was with queer representation. I love that they included that. You know, there weren't any, not that I can think of. Now, it has been a few years since I read the series, like a while. I did do a second read, probably like maybe around like the 2014. You know, my memory is not the freshest on the entire series, but as a whole general concept, I remember quite a bit of it. Books were written, you know, like 2007 to 2010, I would say. And there was not a lot of LGBT representation, of course, you know, and you can always say, you know, oh, well, this were different times, and I totally understand that, but it made sense that they did take that into account with their casting and the creative direction of the show and the characters. I think that made total sense and was very much needed. My next pro was kind of a big one in the book series. Now I have to say, you know, when I was reading this as like a 13, 14-year-old girl, I was totally into the series, and I thought it, you know, I thought it was just the best thing ever. Kind of rereading it and looking back on it as an adult, there are definitely a few questionable points in the story and the plotline and the characters, and the biggest one is, of course, the age gap between the two kind of main characters, Rose and her love interest, Dimitri. Rose is like 17 years old in the book, and Dimitri is like this teacher, mentor, authority figure, and he's 24. So, you know, when I was reading this as like a 13-year-old, I'm like, ooh, romantic, you know, crush on my teacher type of thing. Looking back on adult, I'm like, that's a little ick, you know, that's a little ick. So I read in interviews that the writers, who I think they were writers on the Vampire Diaries as well, I can't remember. I think Julie Plec is one of them, and then I can't remember the other one. I'm sorry. I can't remember. I think it's like Marguerite. I read in an interview that they kind of like aged up. I guess they aged up Rose, and maybe they aged down Dimitri. I don't know. Their ages are never like specifically stated, but it's kind of more implied just like through the show, and I guess somewhat resolve that kind of ick factor a little bit, but it is still kind of ambiguous in the TV show. Which brings me to another point, which is kind of strange, but there's a few scenes where you see like all the instructors and the teachers and, you know, the mentors like partying and like drinking with the students, and that just always kind of like was a little bit weird for me. Another pro that I did like about the show is that they kind of expanded the backstory a bit. Now I'm gonna get into a lot of my cons, and some of these are kind of like gonna interweave into each other, but I did like that they kind of broadened the backstory a bit, and we'll get into that more in a minute. Just because even though like plot-wise and sequential order of things, like they threw that out the window, but I did like that they kind of like built up more of a story around the beginning key plot elements that happens before the story even begins. For example, the car wreck with Rose and Lissa and her family, her parents and her brother, you know, they kind of expand more on that, and it's not just accepted that like, oh, her family died and that's just what it is. They kind of give more mysteriousness to it, more of a backstory, more of a plot line to it. So that I found actually really interesting and I liked, because even when I was reading the book, it always just kind of felt like, wow, what a tragic event. And of course, like, tragedy happens, but I kind of like that they gave it a little bit more of like an element of, yes, it's a tragedy, but it was kind of more of a plot line to it. that serves a later purpose, which I thought was really interesting. And again, kind of going along with that idea, another thing that I really liked was kind of how they really do fill out the roundness of the universe. I mean, it was a pretty round universe and well-developed universe before from the book series, but one thing that just really caught my eye that I loved and enjoyed was seeing like the written text of the old Moroi language. Now in the books, I don't think they really had their own language. They had rituals and ceremonies that they would do in English, Russian, and Romanian, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But in the TV show adaptation, they did kind of create their own language, their own writing system, and I have to say they did a really good job on that. Like seeing like the old documents with the written language on it, like it looks like a real Gothic medieval type of language, and I thought they just did a really good job on that. Okay, so those are a few of like my main point pros that I thought they did a really good job with, and now we're gonna get into the cons. And you guys, I have a lot of them, and I'm really not trying to be nitpicky, but I did try to give a little bit of my backstory as to why some of these things bothered me or just weren't my favorite choices that they made. Okay, so my number one was just like the complete unfaithfulness of this TV show compared to the books. Now for a lot of people, you know, that could be a hit or a miss. For me, I really wanted like a true, unadulterated adaptation of the books. I thought that she did such a wonderful job at the plots and the stories and like the interweaving of everything. And I love whenever authors do something where they'll have like a little Easter egg like in book 2, and then they come around to book 6 and then that all ties in and it was there the whole time. Stuff like that to me is just like a point of a really well written author to like, you know, plant these little seeds all along the way and then have them actually tie in. Okay, so my next point, the setting. So in the books, it's kind of a strange setup, but they are in remote Montana, and it's just like this isolated old medieval kind of castle style academy. They just like totally changed the setting of that, which I think in the end makes sense for the visual aspect of the show. So the show is kind of set, I don't know if they ever specifically say it's set in Spain, but I do know that's where they filmed. So I think it's just kind of generally accepted that Spain or Europe or, you know, something like that is the general setting of the TV show, which, like I said, I think makes sense because really, how many like medieval castles are there in the middle of Montana? I don't know. I've never been to Montana. I'm sure it's a lovely state, a lovely place. I'm sure there's some medieval castles out there, but it did strike me as a strange choice when I was reading the books. So it made sense like visually that they would have it set somewhere else in Europe. It kind of makes more sense that way. However, one thing I hated, and they did this so much, and again, it was with the setting, you know, in the books, to me, it always kind of had more of like a traditional like medieval boarding school academy type of style, but in the show itself they really lean heavily into the futuristic technology but mixed with like medieval traditional type of like building. So like you'll have this like awesome castle, but then there will be like flashing rave lights everywhere, which is kind of a weird thing. It's kind of cool, I guess, because it's so different, but it's also just kind of weird to me because in the books, I mean, they really downplayed technology a lot. There's not much technology ever in the books. Like they barely even have cell phones mentioned in the books and things like that, which I really like because it kind of puts it into almost like a suspended, like ambiguous time period and stuff, which I kind of like because it's not so dated. And then the whole technology aspect really made it feel very like Hunger Gamesy to me, which again was just totally not the vibe of I had when reading the books. And then another change that they had, and again this was like more of a minor one, which I think might lean more towards my pro side than my con side, but in the TV series they are kind of more, they're not like just a school, they're kind of like a little community. Like there's little shops and little stores and little bars and, you know, all kinds of things that really kind of build and expand on the idea of like this medieval kind of village almost, which I think makes a lot more sense than like just being a school in the middle of like remote Montana. So my next point under the like characters subheading, they did some weird things with their casting choices and with character development. And one of the things was that they just completely deleted the character Natalie. She was Victor's daughter in the book series, and she just completely is not in the show. So instead, they took two more characters and kind of conflated them into what would have been Natalie, but they are two completely separate characters, independent characters in the book that they just made into someone else that could have been in there, but they decided not to have it. I'm not quite sure what the decision on that one was, because especially since they're not going for like a straight adaptation, they were really loose with playing around with characters and stuff. And so those two characters, of course, the first one is Sonia Karp, who in the books was a former teacher at the academy. So she is now the daughter of Victor. And then another character who was named Mia Rinaldi in the book series, who was just another kind of classmate, and later she kind of comes to be more of a prominent character. So they change her to being Mia Karp. I think they are adoptive sisters now, taking the place of the character of Natalie. So I thought that was a very interesting and different choice, but it is the choice they made. Another change that was I would say maybe the first one that really like jumped off the bat to me was that the queen monarch of the vampire world, when they said her name, I was like, wait, that is not the queen's name. I was expecting them to say Queen Tatiana, but that is not who is the current queen in the show. So they created a new character who is Queen Marina, who kind of takes the place of Queen Tatiana, but kind of gets confusing because there's another Tatiana who kind of becomes the other Tatiana. So I don't know, they did a lot of character switching, a lot of it. She went from being like a 70-year-old queen woman to like this young 30-something-year-old woman. So they really did a big switch on that character and her position in the beginning of the show, which they set up for the later episodes and the finale and all of that. Another character change that they did, and this was one that really kind of took me off guard because as someone who is reading the Bloodline series, I am familiar with this character because they are actually in this whole other series. I mean, they're a very small character, but the character is Mikhail, which if you remember, we have the character Sonia Karp from the books. Sonia Karp and Mikhail are lovers. And in the TV show, Mikhail is also one of the guardian trainers, teachers, instructors, whatever you want to call it, which is what he was in the books as well, but they kill him in like the third or fourth episode. I can't remember which one, but they straight up kill him, which is so strange because like he lives in the real book series, lives on into the other book series, and Sonia and Mikhail get married. So that kind of threw me off too. Okay, and then the last character switch that I'm going to talk about that was a little bit of a different one was Christian's parents. Now Christian is the love interest of the princess, the Dragomir princess Lissa. That is like her boyfriend, her love interest, and Christian's parents turned Strigoi, which is like the evil vampires. And in the book series, they're dead, but in the TV show, they're alive, which I actually kind of think was a fun, good twist because it does have that familiar character arc, but it's using it in more of like a plotline type of way, whereas in the book series, it was just kind of almost like kind of a scapegoat explanation of like, okay, well, here's these people that did a horrible thing, and then this is why Christian's ostracized. But then in the TV show, I think it kind of gave it a little bit more power to have them be the Strigoi, but then it being useful to the plotline, if that makes any sense. I'm trying to like not completely spoil stuff, but it's kind of hard. Okay, now moving on to the whole casting of the characters, which, you know, a lot of it really didn't bother me, but some things just bothered me a little bit. Number one was Dimitri. I thought visually he looked pretty good. The only thing is like, obviously in the books, like he has like long hair and stuff. Like that's like supposed to be, you know, one of his physical attributes. I don't really think that's a big deal, but he is like Russian. So Russian that you can't forget he's Russian. Like she always like made notice of that and like brought it to the attention. So it's just kind of weird that he has an English accent, but they still recognize that he's Russian. So not the biggest complaint on that one, but just one thing that I couldn't get past. Supposed to be Russian, they recognize that he's Russian, he grew up in Russia, but he has an English accent. And that's another thing. Everybody has like just all kinds of different accents. I mean, like you have American accents, English accents, Scottish accents maybe, Australian accent, like there's so many different types of accents. It's kind of an auditory trip for me because I'm expecting expecting like some type of cohesion or uniformity with like the voices, and just everybody has a completely different accent, which again, I think kind of works for the more like international, like foreign abroad type of setting. So that one I would say probably leans more towards a pro than a con for me. Okay, so for the character of Rose, I think physically she like fits the book description more than the actress that they chose for the movie adaptation. They just chose, I think her name is Zoe or Deutsch. But anyway, she's just like, you know, honestly, she's just like a brunette white girl. I like that they made Rose like more of like a person of color, because in the book, she's supposed to be like biracial. Half Turkish and I think like half Irish or Scottish. I just remember her mom in the book has like pale skin and red hair. And in the book, she always made reference to her having like long dark hair and tan skin and dark eyes. And I thought physically, I thought that she looked a lot more closer to what like Rose would really look like than how they casted the movie adaptation. But then it always threw me off because like the model that they had on the book covers was like, you know, white girl with brown hair. So another change that they did with Lissa, now this is definitely not that big of a one, but Lissa is supposed to be like tall and thin and blonde, and the actress that they chose is brunette, which, you know, not the end of the world, but I don't know why I just can't see the actress as like Lissa. I thought she was like very pretty, but there was something about her, I swear, in certain angles I just could not unsee. Like, she kind of looked like Kylie Jenner to me, but I just could not unsee that. I would be watching this and thinking like, she looks like Kylie. And she also just felt a little, I don't know, kind of like a Gossip Girl like type of character. So I thought she was an okay actress, but I just couldn't see her as Lissa as the part. The last character I have major beef with, and it's not that big of a deal, and he's a fine actor, he looks fine, but I laughed. I actually laughed whenever I saw the character that was playing Adrian, just because he was completely not what I was expecting at all for that character. And you know, he's kind of like the second leading man in you know, later books and stuff. That actor just, he's so baby-faced. They were saying, okay, this is Adrian. I'm like, this is who? That guy? Definitely a strange casting choice in my opinion. I have to say that's probably my least favorite casting choice. Okay, so as far as the plot lines go, you guys, if you were expecting anything close to the books, like just throw that out the window if you were watching this show and familiar with it. Like, the plots are so out of left field. I could honestly like go through the whole series and I could pick out like 5 or 6 different plot points from every single book, all 6 of the books that they crammed into the first season. Guess from their point of view, they're trying to kind of like get past all of that so they can kind of just create their own storylines, which is, you know, whenever a show goes on and on, there's definitely gonna have to be some changes like that. But I could literally pinpoint a plot line and I'd be like, whoa, that was in book 4 and that one was in book 3, but then that one was in book 6, and this is all happening right now when that should actually be book 1, but then they dabbled a little bit of book 2, but that's where book 6 should have been, you know. So there's just a lot of like, they took a blender, they ripped up pages of all 6 of the books, put it in the blender, and then mashed it all up, and that's what we got for season 1, which was just kind of frustrating as a viewer to watch, just because I mean, Rochelle wrote these amazing plot lines that feed into each other so well, and they carry from book to book. It was just really well written, so it's kind of like frustrating to kind of feel like they just ripped up all these pieces and like re-put it back together as like a little jigsaw puzzle. So next is the whole idea and the concept of the spirit magical element. I feel like in the books, it took them collectively a while to like really kind of figure out all these little details of how spirit worked and what, you know, can be done with it, and how different spirit users have, you know, like a same common type of, I guess, ability, but everyone kind of has like slightly different strong points, I would say. Like Lissa was definitely very strong on the healing aspect, and then Adrian was really big on like reading auras and like doing the dream walking type stuff, you know, and so on and so forth. And I feel like in the books there was so much mystery surrounding spirit. I think it's the end of the first book. Victor is really the one who kind of pulls the entire concept of spirit together in Lissa's mind. Like, he says, like, well, this is what it's called, it's spirit, this is, you know, the ability, and this is what you have. But in the TV show, it's completely flipped. You know, Lissa goes to Victor and she says, this is spirit, this is what I have, this is what I can do, this is what Sonia had, this is what, you know, she was going through. And she's the one informing him, but it was very vice versa in the book. And it seems like they just figured everything out like so quickly. Lissa just automatically figures everything out on the top of her head. Like, I felt like that happened a lot too. Like, they would have a question and they'd be like, huh, why does blah 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 happen? And you know, Lissa would just kind of look and she'd be like, well, maybe it's because of this and this and this. And like, she would just immediately figure it out off the top of her head, which felt weird, which, again, kind of going back to the whole spirit thing, you know, I kind of like liked that there was so much mystery surrounding it, and like, you're figuring out stuff right as they are. I don't know, it just felt so out of thin air, figuring out like the darkness and the lightness and, you know, how spirit works and the spirit bond and everything like that. It just seemed a little, I guess, again, rushed. And that was definitely a theme I noticed in the entire series, was a lot of things just felt rushed to me. Relationships felt rushed. I feel like they didn't really give enough time to kind of create the tension between like Rose and Dimitri and Lissa and Christian and, you know, everybody else. I just feel like everything was just like, okay, episode 2, we are in love. I felt like there wasn't enough build up to the relationship aspects, and honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't feel a lot of chemistry for, you know, the two main couples. I just really didn't feel that much chemistry for them at all. And I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I just wasn't buying it. It all felt too rushed for me to like feel invested into like these characters' relationships. I feel like in the TV show, Rose and Lissa's relationship almost feels like not as hardcore in the books. Like, in the books, like, it really feels like Rose has truly like devoted her life to Lissa, at least for the first like 3 books, I would say. Like, she's really just all about her. Like, they come first. Like, she is my main priority, and she really kind of kicks a lot of her personal stuff to the side. But in the TV show, I feel like she has a lot more sense of self and a lot more independence, because I feel like they were very kind of toxically codependent on each other in the book series. So I do like that Rose kind of has a little bit more sense of self. And so in the show, the part when Rose pretty much decides that she is going to leave, you know, Lissa kind of just accepts it. She's just kind of like, okay, all right, well, you're gonna come back because I'm gonna be a great queen and you're gonna want to come back. So I don't know, it just seemed like the relationship wasn't as developed to me. Okay, another thing that I mentioned, they just completely gave Lissa's entire plot line doing the campaign to run for like queen. They just gave that entire thing to Victor, which was weird, because they even gave her famous quote line of, you know, what must a leader have to be a good leader? And Lissa's profound quote is, a leader mustn't have anything because they have to give everything. And they just like straight up gave that entire thing to Victor, which I thought was strange. And the trials, when we get to the trials, those I felt were so cheesy. It was so strange because in the books, whenever Lissa's part of the trials, there's a lot more candidates, and they're slowly kind of weeded out through the few trials that they do. With this one, it just kind of seemed like from the beginning, it was always just going to be Victor and Tatiana. Yeah, we all know, you know, it's going to come down to those two, but it's like they didn't even bother with like trying to put anyone else in it. And then the trials that they had made no sense to me at all. The first one I think was like the elemental trial, and it's literally them just like fighting against wind. Like, what was that? They were just like blowing gusts of wind at them, not trying to fall over or something. I don't know if I missed something. And how'd they even quantify the winner for that round? They were both doing the same damn thing. And then when they did the trial for the fighting, you know, all they did was just, they both picked someone to fight for them, which I get, like, from a medieval standpoint, like that was something that was done. Like, come on, I've seen Game of Thrones. Like, they'd pick their champions and fight for them and stuff, but like, how does that prove whether they're a good leader or not? Did I miss something? I need to go back and remember the trials that were in the book. I do remember there was one where they would be dropped off in the middle of the wilderness with like a compass, and they had to find their way back. Like, that is something that kind of made sense and was practical. But to just say like, okay, that person's gonna fight for me, what does that prove? And then the final trial, they eat like a glob of Saint Vladimir's blood. Did I miss something? And then they like have to say what a good ruler would need. And then that's the part where Victor famously takes Lissa's line. But then Queen Marina declares Victor as the winner. And then there's basically one part when the Queen Marina, she's basically just like, well, fuck the trials, you know, Lissa's gonna be queen because I want her to be queen, and you know, who cares about all of that and the council and everything I just went through. She's gonna be queen, you know? It's just kind of like, well, then what was all of that for? Like the whole hostage exchange like plot line, that just seemed so half-baked. Didn't really seem like something that these well-trained guardians would have done. It just seemed too risky and too totally not thought out, which of course like totally backfires in the end for them. I don't know, it just kind of seemed like a very sloppy, like careless mistake for them to make. And this one like really kind of plagued me. But why would a Strigoi willingly kind of work for Tatiana? Like the part when you realize that Andre is still alive and there is this Strigoi who is like kind of like keeping him captive. Like why would the Strigoi work for her? Work for Tatiana? That part totally threw me off. So if somebody knows, let me know. Okay, and the way that they did the character models for the Strigoi, like they are ugly. Like I know that the Strigoi are like evil undead monsters, you know, but they just made them look so ugly. Like I always imagine the Strigoi to like, you know, have the blackened eyes and stuff and the red ring around them and the really pale deathly looking skin and looking menacing and looking undead obviously, but not like looking like a straight up C-list really bad prosthetics kind of look. I thought it would have made more sense if they had gone for more of like the sexy undead or something. I don't know. It just would have made more sense than like the ugly Strigoi that they came up with. It kind of took me out of the immersion almost, like because it was so comical. At some points it was so weird because it seemed like they were not as like powerful or strong as they should be, these intensely powerful creatures, but then they would just like have one in a plexiglass box. And it's like, are you telling me a Strigoi couldn't like smash out of a plexiglass box or like break a little chain off of the wall or something, you know? It was just kind of weird. I don't know. I'm just not buying it that a plexiglass box would have held them in. Another plot line, like totally switching character type of thing. Spoiler alert, in the end, in the finale, Lissa is under suspicion of murdering Queen Marina, but that is the total plot line from the last book where Rose is under suspicion for killing Queen Tatiana. So that was just another weird one that they just like took a whole plot line and gave it to an entire other character. Okay, I think I've gotten past most of the plot points. The last few things I'm just gonna mention are just few like directive choices and things like that. I have to say the costuming in the show was kind of weird. Like there would be times where Lissa would wear like the strangest outfits and it was weird. Okay, I have to put in a video or a clip or screenshot or something of this one outfit because when I saw her on screen in this outfit, I literally laughed out loud. She looks like a pink fuzzy marshmallow thing, and it was so weird because it was kind of like at a, I wouldn't say a serious point, but it was like, you know, a more important part where she's asking Christian to marry her and she looks like this fluffy pink marshmallow. I thought it was such a strange outfit choice. There were also a few moments where she had this like total Elizabethan collar thing going on. I think she had a couple times where she was doing something like that. Oh God, the masks. The mask that they wear at the Death Watch was so weird. I laugh when I see that too. I get what they were going for, but like the actual face part of the mask just like, I lose it. It looks so weird. Okay, and another thing I noticed, and I usually don't notice things like this, but for some reason I noticed it. So she wears like the same pair of like drop pearl earrings. She wears them at least like 6 different times, which I thought was funny because I don't know, I just feel like they would have switched those out a lot more, but I swear at least like 5 or 6 times, different outfits, different settings, different balls and parties and galas or whatever. She's wearing the same earrings over and over and over. And I think she had a couple different pairs that they would switch back and forth with, but I just would have expected them to have more like earring choices. Oh my God, you guys. And And the music, I swear I really did not care for the music, because so many times they would have this scene that they would just like slap this like B-list pop music onto, and it seemed like they were trying to modernize or like throw in like that modern twist with the music versus like what was happening on screen. But I really did not like the music choice that they chose. It just, again, it was one of those things that just kind of like took me out of the moment and took me out of the immersion of it, because it was just kind of silly. Okay, so that is my review, my thoughts, and my critique of the Vampire Academy Peacock television series. I think genuinely, if you like that true to text type of mentality, you're probably not gonna like this show. But if you're okay with them like completely changing everything, borrowing a few character names, and then just like keeping the world, if you're okay with that, you'll probably like the show. It's okay. And I could see if you don't know anything about the show, you'll probably like it too. Maybe if you're into the whole like fantasy vampire political drama-ness, you'll probably like it. For me, I would have to say it was a total letdown, but only because I am just such a true fan of the books. I'm just gonna be straight up with you guys. I thought it was really well written the first time, and I don't think that Julie Plec was a better writer. So I'm sure this was a very long and very like rambly scrambly type of video, so I definitely apologize for that. This is definitely my first type of commentary type of video, which maybe I'll do more, maybe I won't. They're definitely a lot harder to do than just your typical beauty video. So let me know if you guys have seen this show, if you have read the books, everything, anything you want to say, let me know. I want to hear all the thoughts, all the opinions. Do you agree with me? Do you think I'm dead ass wrong? You know, if you're respectful about it, I don't care if you say that in the comments, just be respectful about it. What changes did you like? What changes did you not like? What did you want to see? What did you not want to see? Like literally any thoughts you have about this book series, this TV show, or anything about it relating to this, definitely let me know, because I'm kind of at this point where it's like, okay, I'm going to continue watching if it does get picked up for a second season, just to see where the story goes, but I just have to like really separate this from the book series in my mind, because it's just not the same at all. Like it's so loosely based off of the characters in the world, but like the plot line, totally out the window. But we will see what is in store if there are any more seasons coming out. But that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram, link is below, and until my next video, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.